Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today as we learn more about Blackboard Ultra, specifically more on building course content. Also, while we conduct these workshops, I want to remind you all that there is no hard deadline yet for switching over to Ultra. You will still have the option to choose whether to stay in Original or switch to Ultra starting in the summer and the fall. So, on our agenda today, I first want to discuss and demonstrate how to build specific course content items such as journals, documents, and so on. Then I will discuss how to add multimedia into your course content, and then we will discuss how to change different settings such as the visibility, descriptions, etc. Next, we will discuss how to move course content items within your folders and course. And then lastly, we will talk about how to edit your items using the basic edit function, the batch edit, and then how to delete and copy items. So let's jump into it. As I share my Blackboard Ultra screen, you will see that when I enter a course, I am brought to the course content page. This is your landing page for all courses and where you will build your content. Every Ultra course will have the same universal design, and you will have a coursework folder, as you can see here, in which you will build all your course content. For today's session, I want to jump directly into building the actual course content. In the past, we've had a few workshops on understanding how to navigate Ultra, but today I want to maximize our time and focus specifically on building the content. So, whenever I want to add something, I will click on my designated coursework folder, and then I will click on my unit, module, or week folder to expand the content. You can name these differently, whether you want it to be a week, unit, module, but you will have the second tier of folders here. Then you will notice that when I hover over my content in the folder, you will see a purple plus sign appear. This indicates that you can add something in the given location. So whenever I want to add something, I will look for that purple plus sign, and I can click there to see the various options that Ultra gives me. So let's take a look first at the Create option, which is essentially the option for building course content from scratch. When I click on the Create option, a new pull-out window appears. Here, you will notice at the top, you have an item called the document. The document is represented by a paper icon. So if I click Document, you will notice that a new pull-out window appears, and this is just an added layer on top of your Ultra course. And something I did want to mention is that when you're creating a document, this is not an item that students will be able to upload or submit to. A document would be mostly used for providing instructions to students, or providing the bulk content that you want them to read through, or anything that's just requiring them to look at maybe a video or something there, but they can't actually submit their work to a document. So that's just something to be aware of. So before we move any further, let's just take a look at this screen and the options we have. So you'll notice to the left in this upper right, we have the title. And Ultra is pretty good about giving you these helpful hints about what you should be doing first. So it first says name your document. So this is where you will always go to add a title to your work. And you can always edit that later on. That's the first place you're going to want to look, is there? And that is for your title. Then if I click off of it, it will save. But if I hover back over it, you will see it's kind of tiny, but you can see this little pencil icon. And that basically represents that you can edit this. So if I click there, it'll give me back my cursor, and then I can edit that title again. So now if we look to the center of this page, we have this that says this directions that say use this space to build your document. So this is where you'll want to look to get started in terms of adding your content. So your first option is just to add content, which I will show you how to do. But you also have the ability to upload from computer. So if you just want to upload a document or a file from your computer, you can do so there. And same thing here, if you have a document or file or content from a cloud storage or Google Drive, you can upload there. But if you want to start building your content where you actually want to type into it, you can click this first option. And here you will see your content editor. And this is very similar to Blackboard Original in terms of the options you have. So up here you have text style. You can change title, header, subtitle. You can, if you type it in, it will be a bit bolded there, and you can always go back and change that, and so on. Then over here you have different fonts, so you can play around with those, font size, colors, and so on. You have bold and all your options there. You also have the numbered list option and bulleted list. You also have the insert or edit math formula option. You have the insert or edit link, insert or edit local files, and then you have the insert content. And this is the one I kind of want to explore a bit further, but again, it is similar to Blackboard Original in terms of the functionality. But if I click here, this is where you can add an image from the web, media from the web, a YouTube video, cloud storage, and again, LTI item. So if you're building your content or a document and you want to give students a video to see, they could click on, you could either click on insert or edit media from the web, and this will allow you to, if I click here, this will allow you to directly post in your URL, and then you can add your alt text for accessibility. And this option allows you to actually post private or unlisted videos. However, with the insert YouTube video option, this is more for public videos that are available on YouTube, and you could easily search here for something. Say I want to look for something with Cape Fear, I could easily search there and see what they have to offer there. But this is more for public videos. You could also paste in your public URL and find it that way. But again, only for public videos for the YouTube mashup option. So say I do want that video, I can just select it there, and then you have some options. It will automatically put in your alt text, and then you can choose whether you want it to link to another tab or if you want it inline. If I click the inline, display inline, this will show your video like embedded, so your students can see a quick glimpse of what they're about to view, which I think is the better option because it's more engaging and students are more likely to click on the video link if they can actually kind of see what's about to happen. So those are some options you have for actually creating a document item. You could continue to write your text down here and so on, and it just keeps getting, the text box just keeps getting bigger as you add your content in there. And then again, with most things in Ultra, just have to click save when you're done, and everything should be good to go after that. But again, this is very similar to building a item in Original in terms of the content editor. So now up top in the right, we have the visibility. The default is usually hidden from students, but you can easily click visible to students there, or you can change it back, and then you also have the conditional availability. And conditional availability will bring you this new pull-out window, and this is basically saying that you are going to define the conditions in which your students can view the content. So you can define it by a date and time. Say that you want your students to only see this on one day and then it's gone. You could have that option or something like that. And then you also have the performance option, which is basically saying, if you click on this drop-down menu, you can say that you want your students to complete their introductions first, and then they must get a certain grade, and then they can view this. So that's just something else to play around with and explore further based on your personal preference. And then again, you can hit save down there. And then the last thing we have on this page is the gear icon, which you will continue to see throughout Ultra. But if you click on the gear, you will see that you have other settings you can adjust. And these are pretty much the same settings for most items you build, but you may have the option to allow class conversation, which is saying that you can allow students to comment on this page and everyone can see that conversation. Then you may see something called goals and standards. The college hasn't really explored that, but you will see that there. And then here you have your description, which is basically, I think it's like only a few characters, like maybe 2 sentences or 3 that you can include. And the description shows up back on that content page, and it's like a brief little description of what this item is. So again, you would hit save. I will continue to move on. And like I said, these will just open up your files on your computer and so on. So you can easily pull from your drive or whatnot. And that's another way to do it. So if I click up here if I look up here to the left, you can click on the blue X, and this will just take you out of this layer or window. So that's what you want to look for to close out of things. So the next one we're going to talk about is the link content item. If I click on link, this is pretty simple in terms of all you have to do to link, to create a link is just post in your URL here. And then you can easily change the visibility of that link to hidden or visible. And then you can add your description. And you can kind of see behind, I know it's darker gray, but once you start building something, it starts to put it actually in your course. But that's where students would go to just click on their link. It doesn't take them anywhere else besides the page that you provide. And then lastly, for the link, you can put in your description again. And up here, you can change the title. And you'll see as I keep going through all these different items, all the navigation icons you should look out for are going to be similar throughout. So like I said, if you see that pencil, you can edit. If you see a drop-down arrow, you can choose other options, so on, and then you can hit save or cancel. So again, if I want to create something, I'm clicking that plus, clicking create, and then this pull-out window appears. So now I just want to talk briefly about these two. You have the teaching tools with LTI connection, and if I click on that one, I don't really have access to information, so I can't really demonstrate this, but if you do use other third-party tools or anything like that, you can link them up here. Again, give it a title, choose your visibility, and then paste in that URL, and then you have some other options to explore. But I did just want to point this out because it is in a different location than the Blackboard original. But I'm going to close out of that one. And then you also have these content packages. If I click there, this just allows you to browse or upload them here. And again, I won't really walk us through any of those steps because I don't have access to them, but if you are someone that uses that stuff, that is where you will go to find it. So now let's get into tests and assignments, because these have a lot more possibilities. So the test falls under the assessment category, and in order to build a test so this is building a test from scratch pretty much. You have some options to pull from other tests, but I will show you that in a few. But when you want to go build a test, you're going to see a similar layout as you did to the document, one I did before, but a test and a assessment are two options you have for allowing students to upload their own submissions or material. So if you're looking for students to upload something, then an assignment or the test would be a good option. And the test could be used for quizzes as well or other assessments that you have. So when you're looking at this page, again, you will want to look to the upper left and you want to give your test a name. Again, you can edit that if you need to later on. And then down here, you have this open space, which is where you will start to build the test. So you'll see a purple plus sign appears, and now you will have many options for creating your test. So this first one is the add question pool. If I click there, you'll see that I have the ability to choose from tests that I have already imported into Ultra. We did have some questions last week about can we import a test from original into Ultra, and you definitely can. You just have to export it from original and then use the question banks. I can show that later, but there's a question bank tab on the main screen that you can just import to, and then you have access to all of your original tests as well. So that should not be an issue. But if I want to pull a question from the question pool, I can really just look through all of my past assessments and say I want to pick and choose something. All I'm going to do is just check, and then you can easily click add questions at the bottom. So this is definitely helpful for saving time if you do have your assessments already made. Don't feel like you have to make them from scratch if you have the assessments available. So that's one option. You also have the option to add a calculated formula question. So if I click there, you can really personalize your question there for students, and then this will allow them to actually put in a calculated formula. You have essay question, which is just like a text box. Then you have fill in the blank. You have matching, I could show you. And these just give you a lot of options. You can really personalize your tests to fit your course's needs with all of the options that are available in the Ultra tests. We also have multiple choice, true, false. Again, you could reuse questions from past tests, which is basically the question pool again. And then we have the add text, add local file, and add file from cloud storage. So if you just have a file you want to upload that you need students to read, that you could just upload that, and then that can be their question. Same thing with the text. If you just want to write your own question in there, or have it just be like a short answer, you can do that. And also, if you have something from your Google Drive or another cloud storage, you can just upload it there. So those are just some of the options you have. I won't be able to go into all of them today, but I did want to just kind of make you aware of what options you have. So let's take a look at say I want to build a multiple choice question. I'll click on that. And now this is where you will start building your test. Here is where you, the instructor, will type in your question, and you can just start typing, and then that will just save there. And again, you have your content editor, so you can change the font and so on. You have bulleted lists. You can insert media here. Say you want a video as part of your question, you can input it there. Same thing as what I showed you before. Then we have your answers underneath, and regardless of the type of question you pick, this is going to be similar. You're just going to have your question at the top, and then your answers are at the bottom. And you can just start typing in your answers there, so on. And then you can just check whatever one is the correct answer. If you have multiple correct answers, you can do so there. And then over here, I want to direct your attention to the option to drag or reorder them. And these are your directional arrows that you will see throughout Ultra. And if I just click on that, I can easily just drag it and switch the position of that answer. And then next to it, we have the trash can. If you see that throughout anything, you'll just know that you can delete whatever's there. And then something else I want to show you is the scoring options. Depending on the type of question you create, you may see the score options tab. And if I click on that drop-down arrow, this is where you have the option to choose whether you want to give your students all or nothing. So if they get it right, that's all they get. Or do you want to give them partial credit? You can score it accordingly based on what they provide. Or you could have it where you subtract points for incorrect answers. So it's a little hidden. It's actually within each question. So if you do need to give partial credit or whatnot, that's where you would look. And then you will just keep going through and save in terms of building your question. Now up here, we have this. If I hover over it, you notice it kind of turns a darker gray. That means I can click on here. And here, I could change the points if I don't want it to be 10, and 10 points is the default in an Ultra, so if you don't change it, it's going to default to 10, and so on, but I could just make that 5 points and customize that as I like. And then lastly, down here, we have the automated feedback option. If I toggle that to be green, and you'll see a check mark, this is where I can provide the correct answer feedback to my students, and then I can also provide incorrect for, say there's partial answers or whatnot. I can give them some feedback there. And just to be aware, just for you to be aware that this feedback only appears after they submit, so they will not be able to see that prior to submitting. So the next part I want to talk about is the test settings. And that's where I will go. I will click on this gear to see all of the settings I have. So your first one is the due date. You can just click on the calendar and the clock to change these. So if I click on the calendar, I can easily pick my day I want it due. Same thing with the clock. You can use these arrows, or you can just type in there, and there you go. And now you have some other options. You have the option to allow class conversations, which, as I said before, is just allowing students to comment on the page. You can check off randomized questions, so if you want the questions to be random for each student, but that's just, I haven't added any questions yet, so it's disabled. But same thing with the answers. You can randomize how the answers appear, and so on. Then down here, we have grading and submissions. This is basically setting up how you want your test to appear in the grade book, but you have your grade option, or your grade category. It's most likely going to be a test, but you could change it if you're building a test. Then you have attempts allowed. Do you want your students to only have one, or do you want them to have many? Then you could pick your grading schema. You have the CFCC standard, percentage, points. And this is really just based on how you'd like to build your test, but just there are a lot of options here, so this is something you'll want to explore further. Then you have max points. Now down here we have some other things I just want to point out. In Ultra, this assessment security is kind of a new way of doing adaptive release. If you need to release a test to one student, you could set up an access code and you would provide it just to that one student, and then they could access the test afterwards. So that's kind of a new feature. And then down here, you can add a time limit. If you only want your students to have an hour, say, to complete something, that's where they would go, or that's where you would go to set it up, and then so on. You can grade using a rubric, add it right there. If it's a group test or something, you could have, or a group assignment, you could have assign your groups there. And then lastly, you can have your description. So I think there's a lot of cool features here. Some I think are new to Ultra, some are pretty much the same in terms of the original. But I'm just going to hit save if I want that to be saved, and then there I go. So now I just want to, the last thing I want to talk about is, again, up here, the visibility. You are able to quickly make this available and visible to students if you want directly in the actual test. And then you would just hit save or cancel. But say I want to go back and I have some other options. Say I don't want to do a multiple choice, but I just want like an essay question. You'll see that there isn't really an like answers. Students will just see the question and they will just type in there. So it's all going to vary based on what type of question you are creating. But it's all the same. Again, you would just change your points here if you want, change your test settings, and so on. You'll notice that if I don't type well, let me show you that again. If there's nothing in this box, this is the save button's gray. But if I do start to type something and I have my question, then I can just click off of it, and then the save button will turn black, and then that's where I can click save. And say I want multiple questions to this test. I can hover under here. It's kind of hidden, so you do have to hover and click on this plus sign. And now I can just keep building my test. So now I can have my second question, say I want another one, and so on. But you won't see that purple plus sign until you click save. So if you're not seeing it, that's just because your question has not been saved yet. And that's pretty much the basics of tests in terms of building it. Like I said, you can export and import tests from original. You can insert files. You can also have images as a question and so on. And we do have a good job aid that Dawn, our instructional designer, created for having images for test question if you are interested in that. But if we don't have any questions about the test, I will move on to our next option for creating content, which is going to be the assignment, but this is pretty much the same as a test, but I will click on it and show you. But an assignment could be used for perhaps a project or another type of assessment that isn't necessarily a test. You could just name it however you want. It doesn't have to be called an assignment. You can just name it a project, and then you can build your content accordingly in the middle here. So again, if this is a project, you could insert just, say you just have instructions or a file with your project instructions. You could just insert those here, and then when students click on the assessment, all they see are your instructions, and then they can complete it and then upload to this assignment or project. So this is kind of a like a diverse item. You can really do a lot with just the assignment. But again, it's going to function the same. You have the plus sign in the middle to build your content. You have the gear to the right to change your settings. Up here, you can change the visibility easily, and so on. I have two more I want to talk about, and then we'll move into other options you have. Or really just one. So we have the participation and engagement category, and this is where you have the option to build a discussion board or a journal. We do have a whole workshop focused on communication tools, specifically discussion boards, that we do have recordings of, and we will have other workshops in the future, so I won't be reviewing discussion boards today, but just know that we do have a workshop that is focused on that. But I do want to talk about journals. So the journal is down here at the very bottom. It's our last option, and this is represented by the notebook or the journal, and if I click there, you'll see a new window appears, and again, it looks very similar to what I've been doing. I'll have my title up here, and then in this middle space, I have where I can just, Ultra kind of helps you, giving you like tips about what you should include here. But it says, what do you want your students to focus on? And this is where you can create your prompt. So this is where you would write your prompt for students and so on. But again, in a journal, you have these content editor options. So you have the text styling, you can play around with font color, font size, font. You have the bulleted and numbered list, and then you can also add your content in here. So say you want your journal to have a video that students need to watch as part of their prompt. You could easily include the video, or even just an image or a web link. So there's a lot of options you have. And the journal varies from the discussion boards because the journal is more of a space where students can communicate privately with you, the instructor. So other students won't be able to see the journal responses as they do in like a discussion board. Discussion board is really where you are having students engage among themselves and everyone can see everyone's posts. So the journal is different in that aspect, but it does provide some engagement between you and the student. So then up here we have the gear. Again, a pull-out window will appear, and now this allows me to choose some other settings. Do I want my journal to count for a grade? If so, you have your grading options down below, as I showed you before, and then you can also attach a rubric there. If I don't want that, I only have these two other options, which are allow users to edit and delete entries, and then allow users to edit or delete comments. So that's up to you as the instructor if you want that or not, but you can easily just uncheck them and then save if you want none of those available. So I will just click on this to close it out, and now I'm brought back to this home page. And you'll see that some of these I didn't close out or like discard completely, so they're just kind of there in like a draft mode, but I can go back and kind of clean those up after. But those are all the options you have for creating things like purely from scratch. But if I go back on here to my plus sign, I kind of just want to talk about a few of these other options. So we do have the copy content, and if I click on there, another pull-out window will appear, and now this is where you will see all of your courses or Ultra courses that you can copy from. And this is very important because when you're in the Ultra course, you're deciding to copy from another course that you are not in right now. So that's where you have these options here. However, if I check on a course and I just say I went right down there, that would copy everything from that course, which is not, I mean, you may want to do that, but if you're looking to just select one thing or one content item from a course, you'll first want to check it, but then you'll want to click on these arrows. So you can check what you want, but just be aware that if you're checking like a folder, it's going to copy everything that's in there. You'll see that it automatically checked everything. But say I want that folder, but hey, I only want my enrollment verification quiz to copy over. Then I'll have to uncheck those or so on. So just be aware that if you are clicking on something like that, if you are clicking on a course, you want to keep going further in with the arrows so that you are only specifically copying over that selected content. You don't want to, if you're not looking to copy your whole course, you definitely don't want to do that because then you'll have a lot of cleanup afterwards. So just wanted to point that out, that you should look for these arrows. And when you mouse over them, they get darker so you can see which one you're clicking on. And then you can continue, it just keeps going further and further. So. And then when you're done, you can click on View All down here to see everything you've selected. And then you can also clean it up from there. And then if you're good and you're ready to go to copy content, you can go ahead and hit that. It turns black at the bottom, but it just says Copy Selected Content, and then you would go ahead and copy it. I'm not going to do that, but so I'm just going to close out of there. But again, that's copying content is a helpful tool to save time and allow you to be more efficient. If you don't feel like you have to create everything new, you can copy from other courses. So the next one we have is uploading. I'm not going to talk about because that's really just choosing a file. But if you do have third-party content, you would look to the content market to add that in here. So if I click content market, another layer or screen will appear. And now this is where you can go to choose whatever content provider you have. If you do use those, you probably will know where to go from here. I don't use any of these because I'm not actually an instructor or have an account, but this is where you will go and you will see down below. But the main ones are up here, and then you have these arrows over here. So if you're not seeing yours, you can scroll through. And then when you are good, you can click on there. Lastly, I just wanted to talk about the content collection here. And the content collection is more of an area where you can browse content from other areas within Blackboard. I know that you do have a lot of options for kind of looking at all of your content or whatnot, and I believe you can kind of choose from there, and you'll see like original courses and stuff like that. So that's one way to look into other content you have available. And then at the bottom, you have the the cancel and submit button. So again, you just want to make sure if you're saving what you want, you have to hit submit. And something I did want to mention, as I said before, in terms of tests, importing from like an Ultra course, you'll want to go over here to this left toolbar, the details and actions. And if you want to import a test from original. You'll have to have already exported it from original, but when you click here, this lets you, it says you can import question banks from other courses. So you would click up here in this plus sign, and then this is where you would pick that file. So that's how you can easily import them. You just have to export it from original first. So now that we've talked about the actual creation of content, any final questions about the actual building of it? Okay, great. So now let's take a look at how I will move around this content within my folder. When I hover over a piece of content or a content item, you'll notice that it turns a darker shade of gray. And then if I look to the right, there's these bidirectional arrows. And that, if I hover over it, it says move whatever item that is. So if I click there, you'll see that it pops up off the page, and then it's essentially a drag and drop system. So say I just want to drag it down here, I'll just drop it, and there you go. Same thing, if I want to drag this one up here, you just move it up there. So this drag and drop system is a bit different than the original in terms of how you move stuff, but once you get used to dragging it with these arrows, you just have to make sure you click there first and then drag it. Once you get used to it with your mouse, it's fairly simple to move stuff around. So if you are creating content and it's not in the right area, you just look for those arrows, and then you can go ahead and move them around that way. Any questions about how I did that? Just clicking on those arrows and then moving them around. So the last part I just want to talk about is how you can go in and quickly edit or delete your content on this page. So say I'm looking at this Unit 2 tasks and I want to quickly make this hidden. I can just click on hidden from students, and I don't have to actually go into the document or the item to edit that. Say, oh, I didn't want that to be available. I can just change it there. So that's pretty easy to do, and you can do that for any type of assignment or whatnot. The next thing you want to look for is these ellipses or 3 dots. We've talked about this in our navigation workshop, but if you click there, this is where you will have the option to edit or delete something quickly. So I can easily delete, and then it will just ask you, are you sure? And once you delete something, it is gone. So just be aware of that. We can't recover anything that has been deleted. But I'll show you, for example, if I click delete, it will say, delete this test. Are you sure you want to permanently delete it? And if you hit delete, it is done. So just make sure you're triple checking that before you delete anything. But again, the ellipses represent like more options. So this is where you can go to find, edit, or delete. If I do want to edit something, it will actually just bring me back to that full page. And this is where I can go, I find my ellipses again and hit edit there. And you can see I'm able to continue building that way if I clicked edit on the main screen. And now the last part of editing I want to talk about is all the way at the top of your screen. It is a bit hidden. If you look here, you see course content to the left as your title, and then all the way over here you have an extra set of ellipses or 3 dots. And this is where you have some other like options for editing or copying. So the one I really want to talk about today is the batch edit. So if I click batch edit, this will bring me to like an overview screen of all of my content that I want to edit. And basically the batch edit allows me to edit multiple items at once. So this will definitely save you some time if you have items that are similar in terms of a due date or visibility or things like that. So say I want to go on my course content page, I can click on the title and say, oh, I need to edit something in my Unit 2. I can click there and say, oh, I want to make this project and this test. If I want to edit those, I go all the way to the bottom. It says edit selections, options, and say I can edit the dates, visibility, or delete those 2 items all at once. So that's definitely helpful for saving you some time, but just make sure you're, again, checking the right boxes. But that at least allows you not to have to do things one by one, but you can bulk or batch edit. And then the other thing you have is the ability to import content. If you want it to, say you don't want it to be in a specific folder, you just want it to be imported onto this page, you could go from there. Same thing with the copying, if you just want it to be on this home page. And then if you need to export this course, you could do so there. So do we have any questions? That is really all of the content I have for today's workshop. I know it is a lot, but I kind of wanted to just give you a good overview of some of the more advanced features that are available in Ultra. So I will stick around for a bit if we have questions, but if you do not have anything, that's fine. Just want to thank you for joining us and your willingness to learn more about Ultra. So thank you.